Hey guys, I just got the 2018 iPad. This is the budget and $329 version, and in this video I'd like to see how much do you get for your money. What kind of a value is this iPad comparing it to last year's model and the 10.5-inch iPad Pro. So let's go ahead and take a look at everything that's important when considering a tablet, from displays to processors, gaming even, everything you'd want to know before buying one. Now, to begin the cost-saving measures, Apple includes a 12-watt power adapter in the box. So if you want fast charging, you're going to have to dish out a few more bucks and get an actual capable power adapter for it. The iPad now comes in this new gold finish, aside from space gray and silver, and I do like it, but Apple's definition of gold seems to be changing all the time. Now, the shell is unchanged from last year's version. This is a pretty typical iPad design. Comparing it to the iPad Pro, it is thicker, but it does weigh the same at 1.05 pounds. Still the dual speaker design on the bottom. The iPad Pro has the quad speaker design. It's a bit smaller in form factor, but it does look a lot older because of the bezels. They're so much thicker. So while the design is unchanged, you do get this very nice gold finish now. It looks absolutely stunning in sunlight. And comparing it to Apple's other gold colors, I'm a bit confused. Which is the real gold? Because Apple's definition of gold, I don't know. Questionable. In any case, that is the design. Colors looks really cool. And moving on to the displays, I believe this is the biggest weakness of this iPad. First off, reflectivity. As you can see, it doesn't have the special finish of the iPad Pro, and it seems to reflect more sunlight into your eyeballs. Also, there's a depth to it. So the screen has an air gap in between the LCD and digitizer, and you can definitely tell. Rotate the iPad on its side and you can see this big fat gap, whereas the other one doesn't have it. And the iPad Pro's display seems so much more advanced in comparison, just because the display is actually sitting on top of the glass. There's not a layer in between it, which is very distracting when using this iPad. Like, I can't unsee it. And on top of that, the new iPad does not have ProMotion, a 120Hz display, higher refresh rate. It's definitely more apparent when there's motion on the display. It's so smooth, so crisp. I recommend you guys go to an Apple store to try it for yourselves. It's especially apparent when launching applications or scrolling on a website. It is so incredible. And honestly, I could never go back to any other type of iPad. I wish Apple would bring this technology to an iPhone. So this is one of those big things I think you guys should consider when shopping around for an iPad, if you want to get an iPad Pro or this cheaper alternative. And the new iPad does not have True Tone. Honestly, this isn't a big deal for me personally. It's a nice thing to have, but I could totally live without it. It basically will not adjust the display to the color temperature of your background using sensors like the iPad Pro does. It's pretty cool. I mean, you don't notice it unless you actually turn it off, which is a great thing about it, how well it works in the backgrounds, but I definitely think you can live without it. I also tested the Apple Pencils and the refresh rate drawing with it. I'm happy to report that it's very responsive. I found it to be as responsive as my iPad Pro. In fact, I was very impressed with just how good it was. I tried to trick it to go very, very fast, applying pressure, all sorts of scenarios, and it was very, very good. So if you wanted to buy one of these to draw on, I'd say it's a very good device to do it on. And moving on to gaming, I did play some Fortnite. Occasionally the frame rate would drop, but that's most likely to do with the optimization of the app. It is fairly new and still being optimized. I'd say it does a very good job, and it's a sweet spot for Apple when it comes to price with what you get for it in terms of performance. It's an Apple A10 Fusion quad core with 2 GB of RAM, and that is pretty future-proof. Honestly, this thing will do very well even 3-4 years from now, because the A10 is quite the beast. And I personally think at $329, the performance you get for it is really amazing. One of Apple's best values. So moving on to the Geekbench, I was impressed to find that the single core score was near that of the more expensive iPad Pro model and not too far behind even the iPhone X. So wow, the multi-core score was just shy of 6,000, single core just a few hundred points behind the iPad Pro. That is so dang incredible. GPU performance in Antutu, not too far behind either, but definitely a bigger gap between these two here. But overall, you're getting so much performance for the money. That is incredible. This thing really will be future-proofed in my opinion. And I did a little experimentation with the UI responsiveness, going home, going into the app switcher, just playing around with it. And I found that in some cases, it's even more responsive than the 10.5-inch iPad, which I was a bit surprised to find. And this may or may not have anything to do with the fact that this new iPad was built exclusively on iOS 11.3, which has a lot of performance improvements, but still with time, maybe iOS 12, there could be more of a distinction between these two. Now moving on to the Touch ID test, the new iPad has the first generation Touch ID sensor, the iPad Pro the second, and definitely apparent when testing these, especially when the screens are off. Definitely launches faster on the iPad Pro, but the new iPad isn't far behind even with that first generation sensor. And with the screen on, even less of a difference. But do keep in mind that the second gen has improved accuracy and actually will read your fingerprint better if it's sweaty or wet. And of course, with this new iPad, you're getting less speakers, 2 versus 4 of the iPad Pro. Not only are you getting less speakers, the 2 that you have aren't quite as loud as 2 on the iPad Pro would even be. So I got 90.1 decibels, and then using the same method on the iPad Pro, much louder, much more bassier. It's seriously impressive just how good the speakers are on the iPad Pro. And the new iPad camera remains at 8 megapixels, still not capable of 4K video. In fact, I don't think there was any change at all from last year's model. All right, synchronize. So the new iPad is on the left. It is not capable of 4K, so we're not going to get the same level of detail. And I'm noticing that it's not as stable, so some sort of digital stabilization that is not implemented very well, or doesn't even exist, you know. Colors look a little richer on the new iPad, detail all around, you know. It's the same camera as the old one, so if you were expecting any changes here, well, there won't be any. So pretty much the same here, nothing to report, no better quality, anything like that. And I wanted to throw a front-facing camera one in here as well, so really not as much difference on this one. Both pretty much the same. Yeah, so front-facing, still pretty much the same camera as well, so you won't find any differences there. And there it is, Apple's new $329 model iPad. I'd say it's definitely a fantastic value, and if you wanted an iPad but didn't want to spend a lot of money and still get a good value, this is an amazing iPad just for that reason. So thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Peace.